Hey, good evening, and thank you for joining us on the Political Deep Dive. I am Dave Valente, and joining me as always, Dan the Man Fishman from Let.live.
What is shaken, Dave? I like Speaker of the Horse. Is it like Mr. Ed?
No, just a hoarse voice.
Gotcha. It's not
Yeah,
COVID, is it?
no.
Dude, put a mask on. Put a mask on.
I don't know if I got any. I'm sure I got some masks laying around here somewhere. Um, been an interesting week and weekend, especially in the world of geopolitics. Um,
Crazy week.
Yeah. Before we get to that, well, AJ is not going to be joining us tonight. It is her birthday, so happy birthday, AJ, wherever you
Happy
are.
birthday to AJ. And that means everybody who's in one of our groups, you should post a message right now saying happy birthday to AJ. And you should
Yes.
do that while you're also liking, subscribing, doing all the things that we like you to do. As the
Also
kids say, go ahead.
visit the Lou Dog Design AJ shop on want to say Etsy.
I think it's
Um,
Etsy, yeah.
yeah. Uh, if it's our official clothier merchandise shop, great stuff. Not just political deep dive stuff, but cool stuff. Go there, check it out. Buy a T-shirt, buy stickers, buy a tote bag, whatever you want to buy. It goes to a good job of uh, good thing in getting AJ out of the state of Tennessee. So, also another announcement for this week. Thursday night on at 6 p.m. on Thursday night is the start of my new hockey show, which is called The Scabbard. And let me show you our little design that we got for this. So yeah, we're going live with The Scabbard on Thursday night. Buffalo Sabres take on the New York Rangers. So we'll be talking about what's going on in the game, who made the roster, and what preview the night's game. And as we move through the season, we'll talk about the previous game as well. So,
What?
Dan, what do you think?
Let me ask you this. I know you. So you're playing the goal sounding buzzer.
Yeah,
It's different in every stadium, isn't it?
it is.
So is that the Sabres goal scoring buzzer, or
That
is
is
that just a
not
generic?
theirs. It's just a
Aha!
generic one because I do think that there is some
Copyright?
license issues that if you use it. So I'm avoiding that, but I uh,
Interesting.
do want to make sure that everything is good there. But yeah, interesting week in geopolitics, not just in the United States, but throughout the world.
What happened? I didn't hear anything.
Saturday was an interesting day
Yeah.
in that a massive attack on the state of Israel, and and the predictable response of the Israelis to that attack. So it's interesting. I think.
It's interesting because I would almost say that it's not predictable because we have rarely seen Israel caught this much by surprise
Oh, this is
when
true.
something has happened. There have been plenty of attacks in the past where Hamas or your terrorist organization du jour has gone after celebrations. Like, for example, they attacked a music festival, kidnapped a lot of people there. There was a wedding that has been attacked, that was attacked in the past, and that sort of thing has been relatively common for targeting bar mitzvahs, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's been on a much smaller scale. Usually, something larger like this, the intelligence community has been aware of, and so I'd say this was very surprising.
So tonight we've got a really interesting guest with us. Mr. Thomas Sheedy is with Atheists for Liberty, and they've also put out statements regarding the attack and what's going on. And it'll be a very interesting conversation, not just on what Atheists for Liberty are doing, but within the realm of geopolitics. We already have some comments. He may, but he also has a weak love hand, I would say.
What?
The comment.
Oh, oh, Jesus saves, but you're right. It's a
He's got a
hockey
weak love
reference.
hand. Got to
Got
hold it.
it. Right.
Anyway,
All
all
right.
right. So, Thomas, thank you for joining us tonight. Um, First off, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into atheism and how it has informed your activism.
Yeah, so I want to say thank you guys so much for having me on the show. For those in the audience who don't know, my name is Thomas Sheedy. I am the president of Atheists for Liberty. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization that cares about normalizing atheism, safeguarding secularism, preserving individual liberty, and advancing free thinking. And we operate throughout the country. And we're one of the great things we're trying to do is to normalize atheism and the non-religious, a growing demographic, the largest growing demographic in the country, in fact,
Uh,
within the liberty movement. And
yeah,
we've been doing it very successfully and making connections more and more year by year.
in fact, today I saw a poll, APNORC out of the University of Chicago, saying that religion is becoming less popular in the United States. Fully a third of, or 30% of respondents claim no religion. Um, uh, it doesn't mean that they're all atheists or agnostics, or that they claim no specific organized religion. They may be spiritual in nature, but it's growing, especially amongst the under 25 crowd,
Oh yeah.
18 to 29 crowd. That 43% of them don't identify with a particular religion at this point.
Well, you know, and it's interesting too. To your definition of atheism, does that mean no creator? Does that mean no unseen force of the universe? Does it mean no spirituality, no idea of a specialness other
Yeah.
than our biological feature?
So that's a great question. So basically, no supernatural creator of the universe, whether it be Yahweh, Allah, any of the gods within the ancient religions of old or of Hinduism, none of that at all. An atheist is somebody who does not believe in God or gods. Uh, there are lots of different debates as to what constitutes the actual exact definition. Is it believes that there is no God or lacks a belief in God? But the general concept is somebody who just does not hold a belief that there is a supernatural out there.
Right. On the other hand, that doesn't preclude the idea that there is more to us than our bodies and what we could see.
I guess sure, if you want to go into the weeds of the exactness of the definition. For example, there are some people, there's a very minority group of people out in the world who do believe it. Like they say, oh, I'm an atheist, but I believe in spirits, or I believe in
Right.
like supernatural spirituality. It's very, very minute.
Yeah.
Um, so like if you meet most atheists, not only do they say they don't believe in God, but they don't believe in any supernatural forces beyond what we know,
Right.
in the cosmos whatsoever.
Right.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of the Arthur C. Clarke quote that any technology that is sufficiently advanced appears like magic.
Yeah.
Sure, sure. So, talk about Atheists for Liberty and what the idea is behind Atheists for Liberty, and what
Mhm.
you're hoping to accomplish here with the group.
So there was a wonderful phenomenon that shaped Western civilization and shaped the United States for around 2 decades, or nearly 2 decades in this country, called the New Atheist Movement. There's a group of different atheist authors and speakers who have written bestsellers advocating for that humans can still exist and flourish in civilized society without God. That not only do we not need religion, but also that organized religion has been fairly harmful to the United States and to our quest to have enlightenment values in our nation. Entire stadiums would be filled to the brim with famous speakers like Richard Dawkins and the late Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris and Daniel Dennett and so many others. Massive think tanks exploded with advocacy and local groups defending the separation between church and state in all 50 states. People were advocating for ex-Muslims to not be killed in the Islamic world simply because they didn't believe in the God of old, of the of the Islamic world. Um, it was amazing, and I was a part of it for many, many years. But in around the midst of its time, the middle of its time, in around 2013, 2014, what we now know today is social justice extremism, wokeness, or critical social justice came into our movement. We were one of the first movements that was corrupted by this ideology. We were told that we were filled with sexism, racism, Islamophobia, every kind of phobia on the map. And very quickly, this amazing counterculture dwindled into near nothing. One of the great things that New Atheism accomplished was there was kind of a bipartisanship that existed in many cases. That while the religious right was very much a force in American politics, it was telling people that if you were a conservative or a libertarian, you had to believe in God in order to care about liberty. New Atheism, before wokeism corrupted it, ended up going even into conservative circles and into libertarian circles. But once New Atheism died out due to the woke infiltration, there was nobody else speaking up for the non-religious in spaces that weren't woke. So in the conservative movement and in the liberty movement for many years, there were no atheist groups that were tabling at libertarian events like Freedom Fest, like LibertyCon, like so many of these other places like CPAC. But myself and a few other former people from that New Atheist movement, we realized we were doing a lot of great things when the atheist movement was alive and healthy. That movement should have not died, yet it did, due to a bunch of people who hate our nation and hate the freedoms that come along with it. We need to continue all the great things that the old movement did through a new reactionary, robust movement. And so a few of us came together and formed Atheists for Liberty, a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is continuing to grow day by day.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm kind of here and there on wokeness. I do believe that it goes too far sometimes, but I also believe that there are some, to me, like the idea of cancel culture is something of the market speaking.
Sure.
That
I was going to say the thing that I always like to say is that, woke itself, the idea, the opposite of woke is asleep. Everybody who tells you that they don't want you to be woke wants you to ignore things that are happening.
Right.
On the other hand, being aware of something doesn't mean that you feel like, oh, this is the appropriate action. Like, just because I say, it's interesting. I'm working on an essay right now, hopefully an op-ed for one of the major papers in the DC area, where I talk about the fact that I had recently made a conversation with somebody where I said, I've been doing a lot of lumberjacking recently. And I said, I never thought that I would be working this hard in the manly arts. And then I thought about it and I said, you know what? I don't want to say manly arts because I don't want a person who would want to do this stuff who did not consider themselves a man to say, oh, well, I can't do that thing because it's a manly thing to do. Now, would people criticize me for making that distinction and said, oh, you're too woke to have done that? And I think a lot of people would, a lot of conservatives, et cetera. And so in that respect, I'm very happy to piss those people off by doing things that I think, are reasonable. On the other hand, when woke is used as a way to stop people from speaking about anything, and you can make an argument, I think, in fact, this is what you guys are saying, is that a lot of people are saying that the argument against atheism is culturally and politically motivated. And they're saying that, oh, you're woke, and so we're going to shut you up because your ideas are too dangerous to be heard.
Yeah, that's one of the great things that we do at Atheists for Liberty, too. Not only do we consider wokeism to kind of be a dogma in and of itself, just like religion. We call it a religion. But we also are consistent when it comes to our disdain for theocracy. We are also consistent when it comes to our disdain for any kind of extremism, any kind of authoritarianism that uses the supernatural to justify its mistreatment of people. And so we are in a two-front war. So not only are we combating woke people, not only are we combating, say, Islamists who are defended by far-left activists, we are also combating new forms of the religious right that are propping up. We want to make sure that regardless of what culture war we're in, what new things are trendy, either now or in a few years from now, our principles remain the same. Because if they're not, then who's going to trust us to get the job done in those few years if we end up lying about what we do in the name of just trying to ride the grift?
So interestingly enough, and I think you can see the chat going on in our window as well. Janice, who's one of our longtime listeners, Janice, thanks for tuning in. She says wokeism is a form of respect. What would you say to a comment like that?
I think that if you are bathed in that world of thinking that social justice, or the modern iteration of what social justice means now, and if you're in that entire ideological circle of just seeing anybody who is outside of that far left bubble as unaware, and not only unaware, harmful and bigoted, you're going to think that anybody who criticizes woke is just some radical right winger dog whistling at stuff and using wokeism as some kind of excuse to hide your bigotry. There are some people who genuinely believe that wokeism is a respectable thing, to be awake about true injustice in the world. And those people have my respect, because at least those people actually believe it. I think they're wrong. I think they haven't really been outside the confines of maybe certain activist circles that have been so polluted with this ideology. So we have to do more of what we can to help show people like Janice, like, hey, like the only reason why the idea of wokeness being some kind of like mirror of respect has been perpetuated is because more and more people are being indoctrinated to believe that it is just like religion. The way people are indoctrinated to believe critical social justice thinking is the same way that religious people, good people, have been indoctrinated to believe the same things about faith and religion and spirituality.
Where would you say then the line is, we talk about critical social justice, for somebody to be aware of discrimination that's happened in the past? Let's say, either redlining or glass ceilings, that sort of thing, to acknowledge those things, as opposed to the idea that you might act on them. Is acknowledging them woke?
No, I don't think so. I think it's important, if we really are trying to push back against this false history that these critical social justice activists are pushing, we need to acknowledge the real injustices that have happened in this country: redlining, slavery, mistreatments during the civil rights era, and previous times in American history. I think you can be consistent in pointing out real imperfections that this country has had, while simultaneously knowing when things go too far and when crazy takes the wheel. Also, Janice, I'm seeing you in the comments here. I have in the studio I'm in here, the virtual studio, I'm seeing you're saying I'm not a bigot. I'm not saying you're a bigot. I'm not at all. Quite the opposite.
Yeah, and so I think maybe there's something that we want to push out a little too, because so when I first read the sort of the war against wokeism, to me it feels like most of the practitioners of the war against wokeism are hardline conservatives. And it's interesting because you don't mean to say that you are aligning yourself with their forms of movement. As an example,
Or at least not only their form of movement.
right. Well, and because usually hardline conservatives, when they are against wokeism, they tend to mean there shouldn't be drag shows.
Right.
Right. And so do you worry sometimes that people might look at that and say, well, this is where they are? They say they're against wokeism, so they're against LGBT,
Yes.
that they are stuff like that.
Yeah, Dan, you're 100% right. It is something that is very, very dangerous. There are some people that get so bathed in being anti-woke that they end up not remembering why they ended up becoming anti-woke in the first place. They'll end up being against drag queen story hours so much that they'll want to just ban drag queens from performing for adults. They are so you have some people that end up being against the gender insanity of the woke movement when it comes to like being non-binary and gender fluidity, and with all that stuff, that some people end up being in the same chat rooms as people who want to criminalize homosexuality or ban the 19th Amendment, or
Well, let's
criminalize
follow
gay.
up on that statement, because I think it's a little broad when you say the gender insanity. What do you mean by that?
So I'll be very clear. I am in favor of adults identifying or doing whatever they want
Right.
as individuals. The thing I am against, from a scientific perspective here, is people saying, I'm going to call myself Z or Zer, or they or them, nothing to do with male, nothing to do with female, and get extremely annoyed if you don't if you don't respect that from a biological or scientific point of view, or not only am I trans, or do I say that I'm trans, but I am, my sex is different than the one assigned at birth, not just gender. And so we've gone so crazy on a spectrum now to
Right.
where we're betraying science and reality, and really liberalism, classical liberalism in and of itself,
Right.
in favor of coddling ideas that we know to be wrong in the name of political correctness. And I think that does a disservice for so many people who have struggled to attain true equality of opportunity in this country for many decades.
Right.
But
You
I
know,
mean,
go ahead,
you're.
Dave.
I mean, the issue that I have with the trans issue is that we're if we're going to be free thinkers and fight in the marketplace of ideas and uh, espouse scientific theories and scientific knowledge, that the ability to transition yourself from a male to a female sexually is science. They've been able to do that. You get all of the things that you need to do to be a male, all the things you need to do to be a female. I think it almost goes counter in that we're tossing away the science just because it doesn't conform to our internal beliefs.
So you're basically saying that.
We're rejecting science. That we've had scientific advancements. I mean, the
Mhm.
last 150 years, the scientific advancements from everything. Where I think we're trying to pick and choose which ones we think are good and which ones we think are bad.
Yeah,
Um, and
that's sorry.
and we're not letting people make that choice. We're letting governments make that choice.
Right. And I think too, like, I mean, there are sometimes statements that I look at. Sometimes I think Monty Python got it best in Life of Brian, where uh, Loretta, played by Eric Idle, says, I want to be a woman and I want to have babies. And the People's Front for Judea says, well, you can't have babies. You're a man. And they say, but why don't we say that we all agree that even though that's nobody's fault, not even the Romans, we support your right to have babies.
Yeah,
And they've kind of got that
that's
idea right.
essentially my
Yeah.
stance.
Okay.
Right. And so it's interesting because, there's this big hullabaloo on the internet that's not hard to find where there's an argument over whether or not tampons should be made available to children who are transitioning to female. And, it's not hard to look for, but it's interesting because the conversation is, I think, so the sort of thing you're talking about, where it really does avoid the science part of it. Although people who have hormonal therapy definitely can have the experience of, cyclical behavior and things
Yeah.
like that, they don't menstruate unless, right, there's been radical changes in things. And so, but to make that statement, a lot of people would be furious about that.
Extremely.
How dare you say that, I don't menstruate?
Right. And I almost, even with my explanation, like I've given here in the past few minutes about this, I almost listen back and realize, oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying this. I would have never said this 10 years ago. Like when Dennis Prager was on Real Time with Bill Maher back, I think in 2019, he was saying there are articles right now saying that men can menstruate. And Bill Maher, who I love, a very anti-political correctness, anti-woke comic,
Yep.
he was laughing at Dennis Prager at the time because he didn't think this was real. He thought, oh, this is just like far right-wing talking points. This is just like conservative, talking points.
Right.
Meanwhile, year by year, there have been more articles, there have been more statements through these activist woke type movements to make claims such as that. So I think that it's very hard because we have to simultaneously, we should remain scientifically consistent while simultaneously remaining classically liberal in wanting people to have individual rights and to be treated as equals in the eyes of the law in society, and to just be treated with a basic amount of respect.
Right.
Um,
So I think the The interesting thing about that then is that, and I agree with everything that you're saying, it's such a delicate line to walk, though. And I remember there's a talk that I give sometimes when I'm speaking to libertarians in general, and I say, okay, how many people here became interested in the liberty movement because of one issue? And usually 60 to 70% of the people in the room will raise their hand.
Yeah.
And then I say, and now how many of you are liberty minded on over 10? And everybody raises their hands.
Right.
And then I say, so what do you think could have happened? What could have gone wrong if, when you started investigating this first issue, if somebody had come to you with one of the really radical libertarian beliefs of, I've got a dozen, I'm anti-intellectual property. That sets off a lot of libertarians right away. Or, free heroin or legalized heroin, something like that. All these things that, you really have to progress in the movement till you're ready to hear them. And so I wonder if you have thought that if you say, I'm anti-woke, you worry that sometimes that might hit people that you're trying to bring your message to in the wrong way, and how you then work around that.
I try to work around it in quite a few different ways. So one thing that I love is our 501c3 status.
Yeah.
So what I like with that is I get to say, we'll work with Democrats, we'll work with Republicans, we'll work with libertarians, we'll work with independents, whatever. If you believe in AFL's mission and values, we will work with you. We're trying to create a new atheist movement. So we'll pluck people out from the liberty movement. We'll pluck people out from the conservative movement. We'll pluck people out from the Democratic Party, whatever. It doesn't matter. We're here to create something new to help safeguard civilization. And that's one of the things that I love. But also, it's through our activism that, since we're all in the liberty movement here too, improves the liberty movement in the first place, because we also then get to show more people that the liberty movement is accepting towards atheists. Oh, I've had some libertarian type views when it comes to this, or that. And I'm an atheist. And these people are accepting me. Freedom Fest is allowing atheists at this place. LibertyCon or Revolution is allowing atheists here. I think I'll get more involved, and I think I'll go to them. It's mutually beneficial in that regard. And then when it comes to some of these other issues, so some of the gender issues falls under wokeism, but then there are certain issues that AFL as well does not take a stance on at all. So we're able to tell people, okay, you know what? You guys are very passionate about that. We are never going to agree on A, B, or C, but let's agree on issue D, and we'll go from there. And that's what the atheist movement should have really done in the first place. We ended up fighting over issues that had nothing to do with these organizations' original missions. And then that's what made the atheist movement fall into pieces. And we're not going to be doing the same thing here at AFL.
Awesome. So, I think that's a good thing to work for. Dave?
Yeah, so let's talk about, in fact, I will share this, make it a little easier. I'm going to hide the chat.
Yeah, I sent a few links in the chat. So.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to share your issues page on there, and we'll talk about those in a moment.
I just want to thank all the new viewers we've seen watching. We used
Drew Bingaman saying he's anti-LP. That is
no, he's saying anti-IP
or anti-IP or probably anti-LP.
I'm with you, Drew.
Yeah.
Nobody else gets
surprised as the chair of the Pirate Party. So,
right.
But yeah.
All right, Drew's the chair of the Pirate Party. Drew, thanks for tuning in. And I'm sorry, Drew, that I forgot that.
Well, it's relatively new that he became the chair. So,
but he was on the show.
Yeah, he's been on the show before,
and I was there, and so I have no excuse for forgetting it, except that I might have been drinking. So, but it is it's an interesting place for being. Oh, this is the issues page.
Yeah.
So I will tell you, Dave, I am on a 19 by 1920 monitor. That is way too small for me to read. Maybe you can control plus it a little bit.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking, James. I'm drinking Shiner Bock right now, which is my favorite beer of all beers. Little town, Shiner, Texas, and
shiny.
It's just fantastic. Their holiday beer is really good. That's an excellent job, Dave. Thank you.
There we go. So, so you've got 4 core issues that you go after: liberty. I'm scrolling quickly here. We'll go into each of them: religion, the free speech and the Constitution. So, um, judging by some of your other statements, you're also very, I guess, pro-American.
He's got a
With
flag.
your,
Just a little.
got the flag in the background. I got like 500 flags, man.
Although he does have a British guy over his shoulder, but okay.
But so coming at from an American perspective, talking about life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and what are the big things that AFL are working on in the realm of liberty?
So, mainly in relation to our four values: normalizing atheism, preserving free thinking, safeguarding secularism, and advancing individual liberty. The normalizing atheism component is very massive. So, the liberty movement is huge. There are certain sectors of it that have more resources and more outreach than even the conservative movement. And we want to tap into their ability to reach voters, to reach people who want to change the lives of many Americans for the better that the mainstream is simply not doing. We are the secular component in many ways of that. And through normalizing atheism in liberty spaces, we're hoping that the liberty movement, through its messaging, could be more kind of American centric rather than religious centric. And we've been seeing that progress in the liberty movement more and more, but we still have more of a ways to go. Like I said, we also not only combat wokeism, but we will combat theocracy on the right too. And there have been people that have been trying to get in the way of the liberty movement's ability to reach more and more Americans, regardless of their religious affiliation. Nick Fuentes and the Groypers, for instance, they tried to mess up Freedom Fest 2022.
I was there.
And I had to get involved and talk to some of the Freedom Fest people about my knowledge of the Groypers in the Groyper Wars.
Maybe you should clarify what that means.
Yeah, so the Groypers are followers of Nick Fuentes. He's a 25-year-old streamer.
Is he that young?
Yeah, he's that young. He
Wow.
wants to make the 21st century the most Christian century in the history of humanity. And he's a very extreme authoritarian, does not like liberty at all. He thinks it's stupid. He thinks Hitler is cool. This is the kind of guy that we're talking about here, and he's caused a lot of problems within right-leaning spaces. Not only the conservative movement, but the liberty movement too. So CPAC's had to deal with him. Freedom Fest has had to deal with him. Turning Point USA has had to deal with him, it's sort of a tug of war. So when it comes to benefiting the liberty movement, if the liberty movement becomes more and more non-religious, or at least not caring enough to have a religious litmus test to engage in preserving liberty, then it's to the liberty movement's benefit, and it's to the detriment of authoritarians everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, we've had members of the libertarian establishment call Nick Fuentes a fellow traveler, which was both
Terrible.
horrifying and
A misrepresentation.
yeah.
But it does lead to an interesting point though, because so I grew up Jewish. I certainly still identify that culturally. I like matzo ball soup. What can I say? In good deli. On the other hand, growing up not Christian, I become very aware of the fact that one of the fundamental tenets of Christianity for many people is evangelism. The idea that you are supposed to convert people. And, it's interesting because it's a word that, interesting is, Dave and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. Islam has a similar idea, although the word is dual meaning, right? Jihad has two meanings. And Dave, you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah, jihad has two meanings. It's there's a greater jihad and there's a lesser jihad within the Quran. That the idea of forceful conversion or conversion of the unknowing to and doing acts for that is considered lesser jihad. The jihad simply means struggle in Arabic, and jihad, the greater jihad, is actually the struggle within. So it's a very individualistic ideal that I'm trying to live my life according to the religious tenets that I subscribe to, but it is within myself and not anything that I do externally to drive that. So yeah, it's a dual meaning. But we've been sold from the media the idea that all jihad is, guys, screaming Allahu Akbar and firing Kalashnikovs in the air and going after innocents, and it's not that. Again, the one that I guess gets you the most religious brownie points within Islam is the greater jihad, which is the personal struggle.
But now, is that part of is the personal struggle to become a better person or to become a
Yes.
better
Well,
Muslim?
to live within the
The
religious
tenets of the
tenets
Quran.
so the five main pillars and talking about it's how you live your life rather than telling
But
anybody else to live your life that way.
so it's interesting because so then you come back to the same problem that I think Christianity has with evangelism. And Thomas, you help me out because you're probably more of an expert than I am in this space. Uh, but wouldn't the definition of greater jihad mean that you have to engage in lesser jihad? Because if you're not doing that part, then you are not fulfilling the
It's
purpose
more
of
of the
religion.
pillars of Islam and the way you live your life. Now, you could make the argument that lesser jihad is part of greater jihad,
Right.
but it's really about how you live your life, and that's really the entrance to heaven within the religious and within the Islamic religious faith. That it's more based on your acts within yourself and how you live your life rather than carrying out violent extremism to somehow further the religion, which you can always have the argument that what that violent extremism does is actually counterproductive to what the goals of Islam are. So
And there, okay, I will say this: there definitely are certain degrees. So one thing I do say is, not all jihadists. I mean, not all Islamists are jihadists, but all jihadists are Islamists. So
mm,
we've seen already over the last 10 to 20 years, um, individuals go into various different secular Western countries, evangelize, and do whatever they can to get into the secular governments that are there, and essentially establish certain zones and areas where religious law trumps secular law. It's a massive problem. It's one of the things that actually we focus on in an organization that I'm also a part of called the Clarity Coalition. And I serve on it with other people in the liberty movement, but also people in other various different movements, a lot of ex Muslims, and also religious Muslims that are in this coalition standing up against theocracy. I'm not an ex Muslim, but they like me so much that they invited me. Um, uh, so it's definitely a massive massive problem that is not ceasing any bit, and it's we're facing this problem in the United States as well, from the attacks on Salman Rushdie to various issues that are happening in Minnesota and in Michigan. Definitely just the issue of Islamic theocracy alone is not something that's only going to be facing Europe or facing the Middle East. Soon it will be facing us as Americans too.
Right. Well, and you can argue it's interesting because uh, I know that the translation of Sharia is religious law. And, I've heard a lot of people say that when the judge in Alabama ordered that the Ten Commandments be instated in the courthouse, that's actually Sharia because he is putting religious law
religious law, yeah.
in place, right? Anytime that the government, and I frequently think about the wisdom of the founders in saying, make no laws respecting religion. That they're specifically saying we're not going to deal with it as an issue at all. And when they do that, when in Alabama or in the South or whatever, they enforce either a Christian rule or Islamic or whatever, uh, that actually that is violating the tenet of the separation of church and state, and it is the problem that somebody says, well, we're going to take all the religions and honor them all equally. That's actually just as bad as honoring only one.
Yeah. It's the whole fundamental tenet of you can't have freedom of religion if unless you have freedom from religion. So
Absolutely, applies both
yeah,
ways.
you got to have it. You got to have all of that because if you don't have freedom from religion, then you're going to be compelled to find the best of if you're you know if you're atheist, you're going to be forced to find the best of several bad options. So
Mhm.
um, yeah, but so let's talk about the Constitution. So it's the I can't. I'm probably going to get this hashed up.
You want to scroll the window, Dave?
Yeah. So not so much on the what y'all are stating here, but the Constitution, the Bill of Rights is either it's not been powerful enough to prevent the usurpations that we've seen from our government. That it's just a piece of paper, and that not just on the freedom of religion side, but if you look at all of the at least the Bill of Rights, that we have seen the government just kind of run roughshod over all this stuff, and that perhaps the Constitution is not the bulwark that we thought it was. How would you address that? How would you are you in favor of keeping the Constitution as it is, and just reinforcing the amendments, or are you more of a let's amend it and try and get stronger strength of protections?
So I have actually not thought about this issue a little too much. Definitely, I would not want to ditch the Constitution at all. I love the Constitution. I think it is one of the greatest documents written in the history of mankind.
I agree.
Um, Definitely, it has some issues, but I think it's been super effective at least enforcing the First Amendment at its core. Definitely, there have been violations, but we do whatever we can as a society, and plenty of organizations do what they can to make sure that that First Amendment is enforced. It's the first for a reason. The freedom of speech to believe in whatever you want to believe or lack thereof. It's one of the core things that makes a free person free in modern life. And I can't think of any document that would be able to, in a more stronger way, that's currently existing in the world, in world governments, to properly enforce our freedoms as much as the Constitution can. So I've not been in too many debates within maybe the liberty community on should we ditch the Constitution and replace it with some other document. What could we do to amend it even further? What I do know is that we're not going to come to that conclusion to any time soon, especially given the state of our affairs right now, the amount of division that we've faced just alone, thanks to the internet, thanks to Republicans and Democrats not wanting to work together like never before. Um, so we have to at least then do what we can to make sure that the Constitution is strong as it possibly can, in terms of making sure that everybody can remain free.
Awesome. Okay. Uh, Dan, you got any other questions?
Uh, well, tell us once more if you could put the website up and
Oh,
how people, if they wanted to get involved, are there local chapters? Is there an online meeting room?
Yeah, because there's a lot that we're doing here at Atheists for Liberty. So, benefits to being a member, for instance, is we do online events every single week. So we do live streams every Tuesday, or every Tuesday when possible. Sometimes we have to skip one a month. We do game nights, trivia nights, discussion nights on Wednesdays and Sundays. That is every single week. You can join and become a member at atheistsforliberty.org. Joining only starts at $12 a year, guys, for a 501c3 organization. All contributions are tax deductible. And for anybody who donates or becomes a member or upgrades their membership, all donations are going to be doubled till December 31st, thanks to the David Silverman donor match. Very grateful for him. He's our advisory board chairman. We are doing so much. We're also doing in-person events in a city near you. Our state director program is only growing. And we're now doing a college campus tour. So if you're part of a campus group and you want me to speak, or another Atheists for Liberty person to speak on your campus, you can go to our programs, click campus tour, and fill out the form there, in order to have us come to a campus near you and to bring reactionary, atheist, liberty-minded activism to your campus.
I'll say
super
from my
cool.
own personal experience, we've been at Freedom Fest adjacent to each other or close to each other a couple years in a row. And I will say, if you are a person interested in having a good intellectual conversation and having the other person not be offended at all by what you have to say, Atheists for Liberty is a great group for that. I think one of the greatest services that you guys are doing is teaching people to be able to listen and hear people without being offended, and understand that sometimes when people say things, they may not be able to say them as artfully as they wish they could. And a lot of times people say things that might sound offensive, but they're not trying to be offensive. And
Right.
if you want to learn that art, if you'd like to have a conversation, I would seek them out at any of the tours or some of the conferences they're going to, anything like that. And I think you'll find a willing ear and a really spirited and intellectual discussion.
I really appreciate that, Dan. Thank you.
Yep.
Absolutely. We've been having a really good conversation. We're going to keep it going. So we talked about this at the top of the show. The Israeli, the Gaza incursion into Israel, taking, it wasn't just Tel Aviv, but I mean they were like from rockets from the air. They were kidnapping people at a large festival, killing people at a large music festival, and bringing them back into Gaza. Probably one of the biggest coordinated attacks. I would say probably the biggest coordinated attack since 9/11.
Well, it's interesting because they are referring to it as Israel's 9/11. And in Israel, they're referring it to it.
Yeah, I mean on a scale size, I think it is. I mean, you could talk about
Right. It's not. It's obviously
London.
not
You could talk about
3,500 casualties.
Spain. Yeah,
But
I mean it
yes.
wasn't, but on a scale and kind of a shock level.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So and now we've gone into the Israelis are responding. They're going into Gaza. They've warned the Gazans to leave Gaza, which is kind of impossible at this point.
Well,
There's no way
it,
for them to leave. But
it is interesting. So for people who aren't familiar with the area, one of the things that the IDF does is before they bomb a building, unless there is a really important reason for secrecy, they will broadcast an alert saying
yeah,
we are going to destroy this building in an hour, and so everybody needs to get out, etc., stuff like that. And so a lot of people have seen very early on Israel destroyed a large apartment building in the West Bank, and we make all sorts of arguments about what's going to happen and where that's going to go. There's a great quote that I first saw in MASH, but I'm not sure exactly where it's from, where Hawkeye says, don't tell me that war is hell. It's like war is war and hell is hell, and they're two different things. And Father Mulcahy says, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, who's in hell, Father? He's like, well, hell is filled with sinners, according to my beliefs. And he says, exactly. But in war, everybody suffers. Sinners and non-combatants and this kid that I'm here operating on, stuff like that.
yeah,
And I think one of the really terrible things that's going to happen here, and unfortunately I don't see a solution for it, is a lot of people who had nothing to do with this are either suffering right now. I mean, there's lots of people, right, who were Israelis who were kidnapped at a music festival who, they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
In the same vein, there are going to be Palestinians who are going to be displaced, people in the West Bank. I think, what's probably going to happen is that Israel's going to shut off all the electricity to the West Bank, or to the Gaza Strip, rather.
yeah,
not the West
yeah.
Bank. And lots of people are going to suffer as a result of that. It's just astonishing that this continues to go on. And, I thought, Thomas, you guys issued a statement about this, right?
We did.
Essentially saying that when religion gets involved, the ability to find any other solution almost goes out the window.
Absolutely. And I am no expert on the Israel-Palestinian conflict. Definitely, I'm learning more day by day. I've been trying to learn more hour by hour, and
Right.
definitely, as now that this conflict is only stirring up even more than it happened in 2005, more than it's happened in the years following that. Definitely, it's I got even more homework to do because it's definitely something we're going to be talking about a lot more in the culture wars. But this, I want this for Americans to be a wake up call that Islamic terror is not only reserved to 9/11. It's not only reserved to the Obama or Trump administration saying we're going to eradicate ISIS. Oh, okay, ISIS is gone, or we're out of Afghanistan. So now somehow Islamic terror is not an issue for Americans
Right.
when it is. Yes, Israel is a foreign country. I know there are some conservatives and libertarians out there that are very much on the America First train. They don't want America to get involved. AFL doesn't really even take a stance when it comes to foreign policy or interventionism. We have different members who have different views on that. But I think we can all agree on this. Israel, for all of its flaws, it's not a perfect country. It is the one bastion of semi-secularism and semi-Western Enlightenment values out in that region of the world.
Right.
Right? There are people who share our values, people who are just like Americans here at home.
Yeah, the interesting.
Who are being targeted, literally, their homes surrounded by Hamas fighters and hunted down like animals. So every angle that the barrels of the guns could get in the window, all the parties in the building would be killed. The footage has been horrifying, and in no way, again, I am generalizing in some aspects. This is a very crazy, nuanced conflict, but this idea that religion isn't a problem in this, it shows that we kind of need to go back to addressing the elephant in the room when it comes to a lot of this.
Well, it's a very interesting thing because one of the most telling statements, I think, is where do gay Palestinians live?
Right.
Not in the West Bank, not in the Gaza Strip. They live in Tel Aviv. And it's interesting because at one point in time, Rashid Tlaib, when that was brought up to her, she said, well, you can't pinkwash this. And I just found that to be an incredibly offensive statement, because the idea that people's human rights to live their lives should be considered irrelevant, that's where it all gets wrong, right? Because you have this idea of a sort of a manifesto. And so we're never going to solve the Israeli conflict. But what's interesting about it is sort of thinking about what do we think is going to happen and what is the next level of solution that's going to happen. And I think this one is going to be, I really think this is going to be a long conflict. Dave, you look like you're ready to talk.
So yeah, like for me, I've studied this region for years. I think if you look at it in a vacuum, you're like, yeah, everything that is going on here definitely points to taking on Hamas and destroying them. But really, Hamas was a creation of the state of Israel because Israel didn't want to be an occupying force in Gaza, so they outsourced a lot of their services to groups like the Muslim Brotherhood within those regions that eventually became Hamas, that became a political and then a fighting force, and that either Israel is going to have to learn to live with Gaza on its border and West Bank on its border, or it's going to have to actually be an occupying force and provide those services, because allowing these groups to do that is, outsourcing this, I think is causing the problem. And again, what's going on between Israel for decades, and this is not to say that Israel does not have a right to exist, or even that the Palestinians don't have a right to exist in their own state. And again, our whole topic tonight is about religion. It is still about religion, no matter what we're saying here, whether the Jewish people should control the Temple Mount and the land of Israel, or should the Muslims have the control of those lands. And
there's an interesting thing here, though. Let's talk about perhaps the most successful path to convert people away from war. And I'm going to make the argument that it's the Marshall Plan. Okay, the Marshall Plan, implemented post-World War II, said, look, Germany and Japan have a history of saying, you know what, we're just going to take all this shit and you guys got to suck it up. And so the American and the Western countries' plan was that, you know what, let's find a way to make these guys so wealthy that they don't want to go to war anymore, that the cost of going to war would be too terrible and too inconvenient on their lifestyle. And I would argue, now people can make an argument that America suffered wealth problems because of this, but Germany and Japan were turned into economic powerhouses as a result of the Marshall Plan. And since then, now, of course, there's all sorts of laws in place.
Yeah.
Neither of them can have armed forces sent overseas or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk about the Democratic Peace Initiative and that, countries that are democracies and free markets tend not to go to war with one another.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, if Israel takes more of a activist role as far as one, building up the Palestinian communities,
Well, I was going to say,
it
though,
would be
but
less likely for them to attack them because you're just wasting all your money. So,
and so that's where I think a lot of the problem has been, is that Palestinian leadership doesn't want that to happen.
oh no, yeah,
Right. I mean, they gave,
it's
Yasser
a fundamental
Arafat
flaw
was
of government. Yeah,
right. Exactly. Yasser Arafat, when he died, was worth $1 billion.
yeah,
Right. Which is crazy in that his country, was living in poverty and he was a billionaire.
but that's the thing. They outsourced it, so they tried to go through the Palestinian Authority
Right.
to do this rather than actually going in there just doing it. And
Right.
and by doing that, you one made these guys look like heroes for providing all the goods and services in the community. And then they said, well, if you love us, you got to vote for us, and if you love us, you're going to join our fighters because we're going to do whatever it does, whatever they want us to do. And in Gaza, Hamas did the same thing. You're going to support us because we're the ones who feed you, clothe you, build your buildings. And then when we come calling for your young men to go do stuff, then they're going to go do stuff because you were invested in us. And if you don't do it, then you're not going to get the buildings and the food and all that stuff. So they have been kind of the agents of their own, not demise, but their own destruction at this point. So
Right.
it's really
They were
you're
never
the occupying force. Be the occupying force and build this stuff and give them no reason to attack you.
Right. And not just give them no reason to attack you, but make it so that their lives have enough value in them that they don't want to fight somebody and potentially lose the good things that they have.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things that somebody's talked about, and I'm going to be a little, if you'll forgive the pun, I'm going to be all over the map here. But, one of the things that people have said that should be happening right now, if you want to end the conflict in the Ukraine, brick every iPhone and Android phone in Russia, right? Make the people pay the price of war. Now, obviously, I don't want the government to do that. I'm a libertarian, et cetera, et cetera. But when people don't have to pay the price of conflict or they have nothing else to lose, then they're totally committed to war. But if you think about, one of the interesting things that happened in the Serbian conflict, or the Yugoslavian conflict, whatever you'd like to call it, whatever side you're on, is that at one point in time, and part of this happened because Monica Lewinsky had given Bill Clinton the blowjob, but the United States did exactly what we're talking about. They destroyed all the bridges in Sarajevo, and they destroyed all the power plants. And as a result, these people who'd been living in this modern Western city suddenly couldn't get to the other side of the river and had no power. And I said, okay, we don't like this. This is much too inconvenient for us. We're not going to support continuing a war. But that only happens if the people are wealthy enough that their lives are inconvenient. Right now, the Palestinians are really, really poor.
Well, and then you're also attacking the group that's actually building their buildings and providing their security and providing their food and all that stuff. So, of course, they're going to defend them and they're going to support them. If you're the ones who ends up building all their buildings and providing their food and providing their services, then Hamas attacking Israel becomes they're attacking my livelihood. So I'm not going to support Hamas.
And, one of the other really interesting things about this, and I don't want to start the whole kit and caboodle about vaccines, but The Israelis are the ones who vaccinated most of the West Bank and Gaza,
Yeah.
right? The rest of the Arab countries didn't do that. Now, we can make an argument about how valuable you think the vaccine is. Me personally, I think the vaccines are very valuable. I'm going to get my new one this week.
Well,
But
I mean, it was also self-serving in that, you know, a lot of Palestinians come across the border to work in the community. So, you know, it
yep,
made
that's
sense for
absolutely
them to do
true.
it. Made sense for them to do it. So, um,
Right.
so I mean, within this geopolitical issue, I mean, as someone who represents atheism and talks about atheism, do you have any other ideas that would kind of alleviate this issue?
I think a few. I think right now American politics has gotten so engulfed in not talking about Islam too much, actually, to be honest, that we've focused only on a lot of the geopolitical aspects. The war in Ukraine, for example, you know, religion is somewhat devoid there. Usually it's one power against another power, you know, in the same region with very similar religious backgrounds. But with this, it kind of gives me 9/11 vibes almost. This is, you know, these were jihadists who came in, killed in the name of their faith, butchered in the name of their faith, and the international response was very similar, maybe on a smaller scale to how the 9/11 attacks ended up. And it's going to make us think more about how we deal with religious barbarism and how we deal with jihad, which is what I like. I think the right has focused too much on just wanting to be as far away from, say, the Biden administration as much as possible, so they don't want to even touch foreign policy and will be America first on everything. I'm not advocating for interventionism. I'm not advocating for isolationism here. I'm advocating for the topic of religious extremism to come back into the Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC newsrooms. And I think it's been devoid of that for a very long time. Everybody focused on Trump, everyone focused on Ukraine, Biden, Russia. Well, it's time to have those old conversations again. It's time to go back to 2001. But I think that's what we need to do. And that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that our discussions about foreign policy in regard to combating people who want to see the West destroyed if they had the chance, I'm hoping those discussions come back. That's the least of what we need to do in this case.
So, would you be in favor of something like when the Trump administration limited, and this is really in you know, at the beginning of the Trump administration, limited movement between between several members of the Islamic world and the United States?
I would be in favor of extreme vetting. I think the vetting was not done enough during the 2015 Syrian refugee crisis, and Europe is now facing the consequences of that. I think we do need to do that. I am simultaneously, as a liberty lover, I'm not a fan of the Patriot Act. I'm not a fan of some of the extreme measures the Bush administration took in order to make our lives a living hell. Yet simultaneously, I think we can all acknowledge it took a few people that had limited flight experience the ability to halt the nation that won, what was it, that ended history in the end of the 20th century.
Yeah.
Our entire apparatus was put to a halt due to people who believed in ancient holy book and got limited flight experience, stopped our entire nation. So we this century of combating that kind of barbarism isn't over. I think we just got too comfy with Osama bin Laden being dead, us being out of Afghanistan, Trump being in office, Ukraine being a new issue, and us really not debating religion much anymore.
So, I think Drew Bigeman has put in a really good point that the right doesn't want to have that conversation because their own religious extremism would be exposed, or at least be a topic of conversation within that.
Well, I think now that is the case. I think actually what's funny is the right in the past was a little different than it is today.
Mhm.
The right of today is changing in certain regards. So I operate in a lot of these anti-woke kind of culture war streamer kind of circles. Like Sneeko, for instance, he's a kid around my age. He's grown a lot in like the male kind of activist kind of circles recently when it comes to the gender divide,
Mhm.
the dating divide. And when the attacks happened, he tweeted out just the Palestinian flag. And what's funny is you have a lot of these people that claimed to be so anti-woke, but also so conservative, or like at least in line with conservative messaging, all of a sudden become like these kind of based Muslims. All of a sudden, all converting to Islam.
Actually, you know
Um,
why?
Why?
Andrew Tate pointed out that the Palestinian Authority did not force the Palestinians to get vaccinated, and that's why he was like, "If I was there, I'd be in Palestine, not Israel." And I think a lot of people are taking that cue.
That's so insane, and stuff like that is so insane. But
Yeah.
we've been, and this is my problem. We've been so concerned just about combating woke. Oh, the woke people are so bad that you'll like do anything and align with any other idea just to be on the opposite side of whatever the left is doing.
Right.
Well, sometimes the people you're in bed with on the other end of the spectrum, they're not saying the best things. I'll actually say something that Trump said. They're not sending their best.
Yeah.
In this regard,
Yeah.
right? And too often we overlook that because we just want to be in the trendy space of whatever's the coolest culture war fight to be in at that moment.
Yeah.
Well, oh, everyone's calling me now.
Oh, Tom,
On
you should have said this.
a show live.
Exactly. It's but it's a great point because there is Nick Sarwark, who was on the show last week, said, if you say the enemy of my enemy is my friend, then you're only going to have friends who have lots of enemies. You want to be really careful about making sure that these people who you might be allied with on a particular cause are actually people that you would call allies. And that's where a lot of this is broken down right now, is that, there is, let's be frank, there really is a jihad going on in both the Republican and the Democratic Party in the United States that they believe that they are fighting for the hearts and souls of the American people, when in reality, what they're really fighting about is whether or not they get to be in charge.
Exactly.
All right, did we beat this one to
extreme
death?
Yeah, I think so.
I know we want to get to the Speaker of the House a little bit.
Yeah. So, as we talked about last week, the doomsday prediction occurred. Kevin McCarthy was served with a notice to vacate. There was attempts to table it, which went down. No Democrats supported the. I think one had voted for it, but then moved his vote to no, to table the notice to vacate, and then Speaker was removed. By a few vote margin. There was about 10 Republicans who supported the
8
notice to vacate. 8.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. There were 10 that supported the.
It was Matt from the Gates of Hell.
Yeah.
Who
Pizza Gates.
Yeah, Pizza Gates. The interesting thing about it, though, is that in listening to Democrats talk about it, about why they wouldn't save him, I was not aware how much Kevin McCarthy didn't do any of the stuff that he promised to people. I mean, he really made his bed here.
Yeah. I was not surprised that in the end that the Democrats didn't come into right in to help him, but it was very surprising. I mean, like I thought that McCarthy I think McCarthy banked on the idea that just by working with the Democrats to pass the budget, that they would be thankful enough, avoiding the government shutdown, that they would support him as speaker. At least, like 5 or 6 of them would come over to negate the Republicans. The thing is, he made his bed. He was a political operative. I mean, that's how he got to where he was. He was a political operative who didn't keep promises, used the bully pulpit of his job to reward and inflame people. And we even saw that on the way out, where he kicked Nancy Pelosi out of her office, which I guess technically, he is the prior speaker now, so I guess that is his office. But
right now, what's interesting though is that one of the Republican women who voted against him,
Nancy
to remove, her issue was actually I don't want to call it a woke issue, but her primary issue is funding for rape kits. We've talked about this on the show before too, how most rape kits aren't processed in the United States because governments won't put the money towards it. And then as a result, lots of rapists go free. And if you consider that is a person, and I would argue that is not a traditional conservative position to be in, that she wouldn't support him, it's fair because he promised her that he would get funding or at least have a vote for that, and he never brought it up. And so,
yeah, Nancy Mace strikes me as a very moderate House member. She's not like some the other Republicans that voted Kevin McCarthy out. She had her own vested interest.
Yeah. And it was a good reason. Like,
yeah,
that was a good reason. Other than petty politics, that was probably one of the better reasons that were given to vote against him. On either side.
Now, what's interesting about it is, they then floated the idea that Donald Trump would be Speaker. Donald Trump has since said that he supports Jim Jordan. Now, what's interesting about that to me is I don't think I can think of a much worse nominee. And I want to put politics aside and just point out two things about it. First of all, Jim Jordan supported the idea that the election was stolen in not voting to certify the results. And then secondly, he refused a subpoena from the January 6th committee. How would you elect somebody speaker who refuses to, the Speaker of the House, who refuses to exist, that the power of the House exists?
Yeah.
So I'll give a prediction.
Right.
So this I'll speak not on behalf as president of AFL, but as a young Republican, and I'm a committeeman actually for the Republican Party, actually. So this is just my personal Republican view. I think right now what Congress is trying to do, or at least the Republican side of Congress is trying to do, is they just got swept out from populists that were a minority within, at least within the House. And what I think some of these moderate Republicans are realizing is if the Republican Party is going to change, where gradually year by year, it will be more of a mix of populists and the old guard. We need to find somebody who's going to at least make both happy. So Jim Jordan is the kind of guy that to some Republicans might be pro-Trump enough, but also pro-compromise with moderate Republicans enough. And I think that's why you have plenty of these kind of mainstream conservative media pundits and activists that are now calling for Jim Jordan to be voted in. I don't know if it's going to be successful. I don't know what's going to exactly happen from there, but that's at least what I'm thinking the Republicans are trying to do. They're trying to just prepare themselves on the chessboard here for an unknown mess that could come their way.
Now, there is this movement, too, that apparently more and more Democrats are warming to elect Marjorie Taylor Greene as chair. And the idea that the Democrats are pushing is that that's the worst possible person who will damage the Republican Party the most by making her chair. But the margin is so slim that she can probably get the 4 votes that she needs from other Republicans to...
Whether the other Republicans in the conference will vote for her is the question.
Right. Well, she only needs 4 votes.
Yeah. Some people are even suggesting Trump, though, too.
Right.
So
right. Although
or Gates, I'd put Gates in there and let him suffer the same slings and arrows that he foisted upon the rest of the Republican Party.
It's an interesting question. Who's the more crazy pants in that group? I mean, I do. Now I have to say, speaking of crazy pants, have you seen the ads that are running in what is Lauren Bobbert's district? It's CD1. It's CD3.
I think 3.
3.
Colorado.
But so there are ads, there are billboards up all over the place now. It says Lorena Bobbert, she'll jerk you off. That is just fantastic for me that somebody has put some money into putting that there. She would be a great speaker as well.
So, all right, what is your over/under on the number of rounds it takes to elect a speaker? We got 15 in the first time.
Right.
I'm going to set it at 10.
I'm going to say 10 or fewer because I think I'll give Matt Gaetz credit. I think he knew now how the system kind of worked under the current Congress. I think he realized, okay, how many votes am I going to get this done? Can we quickly get this done? Because I remember, what was it, January? Um, how many days did they have to
It
meet
was
time and
like
time
3 weeks.
again to try to get it pushed through? So Gates, to his credit, he planned this thing out.
Yeah.
He knew exactly why he was going to do this. He had beef with Kevin McCarthy since then, since before that, probably.
for years. Yeah.
So this was carefully crafted. And if you look at some of the speeches that he gave on the House floor, he was complimenting the Democrats quite a bit, because he knows he's going to have a decent relationship with some of these people in power in the Democratic Party in order to get his own personal goals accomplished within Congress. And the Democrats are fine with it, because more damage to Republican unity, more damage to the Republican Party in this case.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, the one interesting thing about it is that if I were a Republican strategist and my goal were to shut the government down unless I had an agreement on a balanced budget or something like that, I would not elect a speaker. I would
Can't do
make sure that
anything.
we
Yeah.
didn't elect a speaker, because then there's no pressure to pass a budget or do a continuing funding or any of that stuff. Because if I just completely paralyze Congress, and you make an argument that this is really the best thing they could do. If you could completely paralyze Congress, you get all the government shutdown that you want. You've really minimized the state. But I don't think they're willing to go there, because
then you get all the news stories and all that stuff of
right,
suffering veterans and suffering.
Well, now what's interesting about it, though, is that it's not true to say that the government doesn't have money.
No,
Okay? Because
they
receipts
choose
keep
not
coming
to.
in.
Yes.
Anybody who gets a paycheck, if you look at your paycheck, taxes are taken out of it already. Okay, so the government, it does have money. They just don't have enough to pay for everything. And so then,
They've never
they
had
have
enough to pay for everything. That's why we're running massive deficits.
well, but that's the point of the deficit, is that, so that they have enough money to pay for everything, and more than everything, unfortunately. But if I were, and as I've mentioned before, I am the owner of smallergovernment.com, or sorry, smallergovernment.party. Don't go there. There's nothing up. But if I really wanted to shrink the size of government, that's what I would do. I would just say, live within your means.
Well,
I'm going to stop you from doing anything else.
Live within your means, but I mean, eventually you're going to have to do some of the things. And I've made the point here on the show before that government shutdowns end up costing money in the long run, more money than if we just kept doing CRs, which it basically it's a baseline budget that you can operate under. The just getting contractors and those people back up to speed after a government shutdown is so expensive and so time consuming that we end up losing a lot of money just doing the government shutdown. Now, I agree with you. Best way to do it would be to continue to be muddling through this. I mean, my prediction is it's going to be more than 10, and I don't think either Scalise or Jordan will be the eventual speaker.
I think that it's interesting. I think that there's a small chance for a moderate Republican who is not going to run again to make a deal with the Democrats and win through that way. That's what I think is going to happen. I don't know who it's going to be.
It would be interesting to see if a moderate Republican or even a moderate it would have to be a moderate.
It can't
Republican
be
that would go and say, get with the moderate Republicans, the ones that will never vote for a guy like Jim Jordan or Matt Gaetz or any of those folks.
Right.
Get together with a few of the moderate Democrats enough to get the speakership and say, all right, well, when I start parsing out committee assignments, that the Democrats will get some of the chairmanships.
I don't know, though. I almost feel like the ball is in the Democrats' court at this moment, because even though Republicans control a majority in the House, Matt Gaetz and a few of the other Republicans who voted out McCarthy is at the Democrats' bidding at the moment. They mutually benefit each other right now. It's the majority of Republicans that, to the eyes of both the Gateses of the world and the Democrats, that are a problem. So it's kind of hard. So I don't even know. I really don't have a solid answer as to what's going to happen. It really is a wild card here
Yeah,
as to how this is going to play out.
it's not
Yeah.
going to be a quick process. That's for sure.
It's interesting. And so one of the really crazy things that has happened occasionally in the past, this used to happen in Massachusetts all the time. Massachusetts, where I lived, was a one-party state. And in return for some Republicans being good Republicans, the Democrats wouldn't run anybody against them in the state house races.
Mhm.
You could see the Democrats going to, say, Elise Stefanik or, elected Republicans in blue states who might have a fierce fight in front of them and saying, you know what, come along. We're not going to be mad at you. We won't run anybody against you, something like that. Who knows? That's some pretty brutal politics. And I know we got to get to the news quiz.
Yes.
Specifically, James, I just want to answer your question. It's AJ's birthday tonight.
Yeah, it's her
So
birthday.
please,
Give her
first of
birthday,
all, happy birthday wishes in here.
consensual birthday spankings if she is down.
Right.
So, all right, let's do the news quiz. So, Thomas, we do the CNN news quiz. It comes out Thursdays, and just to test our knowledge on the news. So anything that's happened on Friday or Saturday, so we won't have the
Israel.
Israeli conflict in there,
Oh boy.
but it'll have everything from last Thursday until this Thursday. Plenty of news for us to talk about. Now I got to find this damn page. Oh, let's scroll down. There we go. I got too many tabs open today. And then let me hide the chat right quick. All right, the weekly news.
All three of us are taking
Yes.
it, or we all have.
No,
to
we
figure this
all
out.
work
Right.
together, and we'll throw things out to the audience sometimes too when we get stuck. So, audience, please be aware. And then we look at the context clues as they scroll past here. Now, this, I don't know what this is. Oh, that's the G20
All right, that's
thing.
the healthcare workers strike. Kaiser
Right.
Permanente. The
Yep.
swearing in of the new Democratic senator of California,
Who lives in Maryland?
who lives in Maryland, and then the UN. No,
That's
that
not
was
the UN.
NATO. That's NATO.
That's what I'm saying. That's one I don't know. Was that NATO?
I think so. At least
Okay.
that was all European class, so it could be the European Union too. So,
All right.
all right,
Let's go.
that's our
Let's
context
start.
news for the week. Question number one: the largest healthcare strike in the United States history began this week. Around how many hospital employees walked off the job? Oh boy, 20,000, 35,000, 50,000, or 75,000.
This is the worst ever. I hate that when they ask a number because
wouldn't-
it's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But we find it's usually either the high end or the low end. And I'm going to guess because it's in California, right?
Yep. Let's see.
Oh,
James
James
says,
says 30,000.
well,
Let's try 30,000 and see.
oh, Craig says 75. No, that's
Yeah,
question.
but he ended with a question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. 35,000 is in the middle. I don't have a problem with trying that.
All right, let's do 35,000.
All right.
Oh,
Boy.
75,000.
Damn it. It's always
Oh,
the top or
wow.
the bottom.
Top of the bottom. All right.
It's
Off to a
crazy.
splendid start.
Waiting for Dan here.
Yeah.
All right. So, question number 2. Which lawmaker was ousted from his role as Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives? This is an easy one.
Gee, I don't know.
On track.
I will say, all right, so who remembers the last name of Kevin from the Home Alone movies? What was his last name?
Kevin. Oh, shit.
Oh God, I wouldn't know.
I don't remember either. One of the guests will get it, though. But that was my favorite meme that went around. One of these, Kevin successfully defended his house.
My other favorite meme was that, at least this is the first time that Matt Gaetz has screwed anyone over the age of 18.
Wow. Pretty fierce.
Question number 3. A recent letter from the Vatican appears to show that Pope Francis may consider opening the door to blessing same-sex couples. Oh, good Lord.
Oh,
And if you watched the show a while back, you know where it is. Where is the city of Vatican City located?
Yeah, we know it.
Spain, Portugal, Croatia.
Italy.
It is in Italy.
Yes, we did our first country feature was on the Holy See. So.
Yeah, we're planning on doing all 280 countries and territories. I do want to say, they're talking about underneath. So it does say that they're not talking about ordaining marriage. They're talking about
Same-sex unions.
giving them not even that. They're talking about giving them a blessing. They're not ordaining them. They're not
Like you did this through the government. You did this through secular means.
right.
And, bless you as an individual person.
Yeah, exactly.
So they want to
I
be automatically excluded from the sacraments type deal.
exactly.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting about it though is that I think that the French have the best iteration of civil unions, where if you want to get a civil union, and obviously I don't want the government to be involved in civil unions or anything, voluntarism for everything. But in France, if you get a civil union, you go down, you file, and you get the paperwork, it automatically expires after 5 years unless you choose to renew it. I think it's a very clever idea.
So like marriage licensing every 5 years.
Exactly.
God, that's how much do you have to pay though?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's France, so it's going to be ridiculous
Yeah.
amounts.
I have to get divorced with you, baby, because I just don't want to pay the fine anymore.
Exactly.
All right, question number 4. Which satellite TV provider was hit with a $150,000 fine for failing to properly disclose one of its satellites in space? How do you do that?
I don't know. I mean,
You would think
my
the government
understanding,
knows everything that goes up.
my
We
understanding,
got a lot of space garbage up in the atmosphere.
Yeah,
so.
I mean there is a lot of spacecraft, but at least the act of launching something into space, I mean, there's eyes on that.
Let's try DirecTV. We got James in the
James
chat.
yeah,
saying
James
DirecTV.
says DirecTV. It's interesting to me too that it's not whatever Elon Musk's company is called. I can't think of it right now.
Starlink.
Yeah, because they have over 5,000 satellites, which is crazy.
Have you ever watched those things?
We probably know how to dispose of them properly.
Yeah.
Well, right, exactly. But there's I heard a good story on NPR over the weekend about the fact that there's so much light pollution from the satellites now that
Yeah.
it's affecting, celestial navigation and stuff like that, which is crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever seen those zip around like just the string of satellites go across the state?
Yeah,
Across the
I
sky?
haven't. My understanding actually is that I guess there's a total eclipse hitting the western United States this month.
Yeah, 14th, so the end of next weekend. Yeah,
Right. That one of the interesting things about it is people saying this is going to be the first one where there's over X number of satellites in the sky. It's going to be interesting for people to really see them.
interesting. All right, so all right, we've got Dish, we've got DirecTV, we've got Spectrum. Was that a choice? That isn't. Oh, that is a choice.
Unfortunately, everybody guessed everything, so I have no idea. Tom, you said
Dish or no,
Dish?
DirecTV. That was the first one we got.
DirecTV.
It was
All
first
right,
one.
let's do it. Ever since
Oh
those guys
no,
lost,
Dish Network. So it's, I mean,
Oh, it was
to
Dish.
me,
Okay.
to me, I mean, it was either one of them because they are the big satellite providers. But
Right.
yeah, I was kind of a 50-50 one on that one.
Oh
Excuse me
boy,
just a second. I've got to go pee and then throw up, and because the information is not pleasing.
That's my favorite governor. Governor Jim Justice of the great state of West Virginia. So, question number 5. Which famous figure was recently honored on a new U.S. postage stamp? Nelson Mandela, John F. Kennedy, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, or Margaret Thatcher? I'm going to say Ruth Bader Ginsburg because she's now been dead long enough to be on one.
I definitely want to eliminate both non-Americans because that
Well, no,
would be
we do. I mean, we've had non-Americans on stamps.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's Nelson Mandela.
wow.
Probably not Kennedy.
I can't. I mean, there were plenty.
We've probably done Kennedy so many times before that,
Yeah.
like,
And Kennedy's on the silver dollar too, right?
and actually, I wouldn't say Thatcher either.
Yeah, I think she's been on stamps.
We're under a Democrat
And
presidency.
she's also been under. Nelson Mandela's also been on U.S. stamps as well. So
It's either Mandela or Ginsburg.
I'll go with RBG.
I'm thinking because, yeah, I think you have to be dead for a year before you can be on stamps. So
Yeah.
or a number
All
of
right.
years. So let's
Oh
check
boy.
it. Yes.
Yay!
Okay.
Good job.
Yeah. New U.S. postage stamp. I mean, right back here is a big stamp collection. I should know this stuff. All right. Question number 6. CDC announced this week will no longer distribute which item? Flu shots, face masks, face shields, or COVID-19 vaccination cards? I think it's the card.
I think it's the cards too, because I don't think they distributed either masks or shields, and flu shots would be good job, Carol. And flu shots are obviously still coming out. Although technically, I don't think the CDC.
I mean, like nobody's even like using cards for traveling or anything like that, or
right,
any of that stuff. I mean,
right. I mean, and they're digital versions if you really want one. Yeah,
yeah. I think I still have mine somewhere.
I have a picture of mine.
I don't care. So, all right. Question number 7. Democratic Senator LaFonza Butler made history this week when she became the only Black woman to presently serving in the Senate. Which state does she represent?
California.
California, Stan. Yep, appointed to fill the state late Senator Dianne Feinstein's seat in California. The news that we broke last week on the show.
Yeah,
we go, Craig. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Craig, for that. It is crazy that she doesn't live in California, but
I mean, she lived there before, and she's been the president of Emily's List, and I think
SEIU. Remember, that's her big claim to fame.
Yeah,
she could not have better Democratic credentials than.
I know. I mean,
she's the head of SEIU.
She's got them. I mean, Emily's List. So, I mean, the way that California's top 2 primary goes now, she's still going to get a challenge for her Senate seat.
Did she say that she's running again? I thought the point was that she's not running again.
Is she not running again?
Yeah, that's my understanding, that she's not going to run.
Okay, so that's going to make that very interesting. That race much more interesting. And so you're going to see, folks like Katie Porter, who's the House manager, Schiff, Steve Schiff,
Peter Schiff.
He'll be running in that, so that'll be interesting primary there. I don't think a Republican will get into that final 2.
No, not in the top 2. No chance.
Yeah. I mean, you could see that. I mean, if you get like 15 Democrats running and they split.
Yeah, if you could get a unified Republican, I mean, it's an interesting thing. Schwarzenegger won't do it.
No.
But if you had a Republican with that level of popularity, maybe they could. But I don't think so.
And that's a rare.
It's a rare thing.
Republican in California.
But right. I mean, California has elected a fair few Republican governors.
All right. Question number 8. Which organization was recently impacted by a cyber attack affecting its unclassified websites? So we have NATO, FBI, CIA, or UN. I'm going to say it was NATO, based on that flag.
Context clues? Yeah, I agree with
context clues.
Yeah, I agree.
That's correct. NATO says it's actively addressing incidents affecting its unclassified websites after a hacking group claimed to have stolen numerous strategic planning and research documents from the alliance, probably Russian-based. I
was going to say, definitely state-sponsored.
Yeah. Question number 9. Climate change is threatening to significantly impact the supply of which crop? Pomegranates, coffee beans, mushrooms, or sweet potatoes?
I think pomegranates, if we're looking at the color, right?
It's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
I had
contest clues.
I'd heard some talk about.
Although coffee beans are kind of that color, the actual bean itself, the pod. So that could be coffee.
I had heard coffee, but I really don't want to go down. So I'm hoping the audience has an idea. It's not going to be water. Carol also says coffee. Carol's pretty smart.
Carol's awesome and fabulous.
Yeah.
I guess try coffee, right? Because coffee is a commodity that so many consumers need compared to like pomegranates. You could just have another fruit.
Exactly.
I mean, I love pomegranates, and I'm not a coffee drinker, so it wouldn't be as a big of impact for me. But Lord help us if coffee, dies out, because then this world will go completely to pots.
I agree. All right, let's try coffee.
Coffee, yep. So the strings, that's what the coffee beans look like.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Before they come off the vine and pulled out. Let's see. Climate change poses a threat to coffee business and to farmers. Arabica coffee, the only variety used by Starbucks, is especially at risk. All right. Question number 10. Chance for 8 out of 10 this week. Which type of pet belonging to Joe Biden has been removed from the White House grounds after a series of biting incidents?
It's the snake, Joe Biden's snake. I mean, it's got to be a dog, right?
Yeah, it's his dog.
It's got to be a dog.
Yeah.
You don't hear a president saying, "Oh yeah, my pet tarantula." No, it's always like the presidential dog or cat or something.
Right. I mean, it would be really funny if he had his tarantula in his hand while he was addressing the country. But
this is definitely like supervillain vibes.
right. And obviously, if he's got a cat, you can't allow Joe Biden near. I'm not going to say it.
No, don't say it.
Okay.
All right. Question. That is a dog. Yes. Commander is presently not at the White House because he's been biting. He's bitten like 3 Secret Service agents.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
All right.
You would think they could have brought in a good trainer to work on that, but
I mean, I think it's an older dog.
well,
So you know, the whole thing about old dogs and new tricks and stuff like that. So
yeah.
all right, 8 out of 10 this week. Very good.
You pulled it out.
Yeah. So Thomas, tell us about your organization one more time.
Yeah, so I want to say, guys, thank you so much for having me on the show, guys. So again, I am Thomas Sheedy, president of Atheists for Liberty, 501c3 nonprofit organization that stands for free speech, free thinking, and freedom for all, bringing a reactionary, robust wave of atheist activism across all 50 states. We do online programs, debate nights, game nights, trivia nights. I'm going on a campus tour, and you can fill out, if you're part of a campus group, you can fill out an inquiry form that we have on our website. We have amazing membership benefits. To become a member, you just go to atheistsforliberty.org. That's atheistsforliberty.org. You click the center button in the homepage, and you can join 501c3 tax-deductible donations, guys. And we are having David Silverman, our advisory board chair, match those donations up to $10,000 between now and December 31st. We got so much going on, and we're in need of more volunteers and more people to help make a difference for us to normalize atheism, safeguard secularism, preserve free thinking, and advance individual liberty. You can follow us on social media at Atheist Liberty. That's at Atheist Liberty. And if people want to follow me, you can follow me at Sheedy Tom. That's at SheedyThom.
Final question. So, is it open to people who are maybe of agnostic?
Absolutely.
Leanings, or
we have so many agnostic members too. So,
or even people who are religious and believe in the ideas of secularism, free thinking, and things like that.
Absolutely. We have some religious members too. Granted, they are in the minority because we're a non-religious organization, but hey, anybody can join. Anybody can be a part of our movement and our community. We're doing so many great things and a lot of opportunities as well.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us this week. I really appreciate it. Welcome on the show. Next, anytime you want to come on, if you're talking about a new program or something like that.
Just let us know.
Yeah, just let us know.
I want to give a shout out to, I see that our numbers are particularly big. So we're excited for all the new users, new people who came in to watch the show tonight. Make sure you hit that like, subscribe, all those other buttons, like, share, subscribe, click the bell. And we do the show every Sunday night at 10 p.m. So mark it on your calendars, share it in your appointments, tell your friends. And that's all I got.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for joining us this week. Again, Thursday night, 6 p.m. Eastern time. The Scabbard will be debuting new Buffalo Sabres season. So we'll be talking about Buffalo Sabres hockey. And then, of course, next week, the political deep dive, Sunday night, 10 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, everybody. Dan?
Say good night, Gracie.
That's a good night, Gracie. Have a good one, y'all.
Good night, guys.